Welcome to the deep dive. We're cracking open your sources today
That's right. We're digging into the articles, the research, the notes you've all shared.
and pulling out what really jumps out. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the, well, pretty extraordinary life of the composer Béla Bartók.
Hmm.
And this isn't just, a timeline of a musician's life.
No, not at all. The material you sent paints this really vivid saga.
Yeah, it's a story of resilience,
Yeah.
strong conviction, and this relentless search for truth, not just through his music, but kind of in the music itself.
And our mission here is to unpack all that material, to really try and understand those crucial moments, the core insights.
And figure out why his story, Bartók's journey, still connects so powerfully today.
Definitely.
Because it really grabs you from the start. The sources, they begin by describing a seriously challenging childhood.
Yeah.
Imagine a kid dealing with severe, constant illness, feeling isolated, and then facing this profound loss.
It really makes you pause.
It does. You have to ask, how does someone, starting from that kind of vulnerability, that grief, find the strength to, keep dreaming, let alone dedicate their life to something as demanding as music?
It's such a key question.
Yeah.
And the sources keep coming back to it. This early adversity being absolutely foundational for understanding who he became.
Right.
We learned he was sick right from infancy, terrible rashes, chronic bronchial problems. One note even mentions a time he was basically stuck in bed for months
Wow.
and forbidden to play the piano, which even then was like everything to him.
So his first real connection with music was tied up with frustration and limitation because of his health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that forced isolation, it wasn't just physical, it really shaped his inner world.
How so?
Well, the sources describe him becoming deeply introspective, very sensitive, finding comfort in just watching things, observing the world from, a bit of a distance.
And then, on top of that, the devastating loss of his father. Bartók was only 7.
Only 7. And the sources really highlight how shattering that was, not just the emotional blow, but losing his earliest, kind of the most enthusiastic supporter.
Ah, right.
His father was the one who first saw his talent, really nurtured it. And his death meant immediate financial problems, huge emotional upheaval for the family,
So they had to move.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
It just added to that feeling of instability that was already there because of his health issues.
So this double whammy, fragile health and this intense emotional and financial insecurity right from the start. How did he even begin to move from that towards becoming, this creative powerhouse?
Well, this is where the sources offer a really profound insight, I think.
Okay.
They suggest that instead of being crushed by it all, he somehow transmuted it.
Transmuted.
Yeah. His suffering seemed to breed this unique sensitivity. His isolation fostered a really fierce independence, an inward focus that then became the source of his creativity. There's a great note in one source that says he learned to listen deeply, not just to sounds, but to the currents flowing beneath the surface of life.
Listening deeply. Okay, and did this listening lead him somewhere specific?
Absolutely. It led him straight to the folk music of Hungary and the regions around it.
Folk music. That's central, isn't it?
Totally central. The sources detail this almost obsessive quest he went on to discover and preserve these traditional melodies. It wasn't just a passing interest. It became a lifelong mission.
And it started how?
It was sparked, apparently, by hearing a peasant girl singing a tune. Something about its authenticity, its rawness, just struck him.
And he didn't just sit and listen passively, right? He went out into the field.
Oh, absolutely. The research talks about him venturing into these remote villages, carrying this really cumbersome recording gear, wax cylinders at first.
Wow, wax cylinders, that's dedication.
Incredible dedication. He was one of the very first to approach this scientifically, documenting the music exactly as it was sung or played, noting all the regional differences, even cataloging the sort of social context of the songs.
That sounds like way more than just collecting tunes. It sounds like an early form of, what is it, ethnomusicology.
Exactly that. The sources position him as a true pioneer of ethnomusicology, the study of music in its cultural context.
Right.
Treating these folk traditions with the same academic seriousness usually saved for classical music. He wasn't just a composer borrowing melodies. He was an academic, rigorously preserving a cultural heritage that was disappearing.
And this act of preservation, this deep listening, it wasn't just academic for him.
No, it fundamentally shaped his artistic voice, became totally integral to his identity.
So he's weaving together this intense personal background, the isolation, the sensitivity, with this big cultural mission grounded in actual field work. How did that research then start showing up in his own compositions?
Okay, so this is where his music gets revolutionary
Hmm.
and controversial.
Right.
He didn't just arrange the folk tunes neatly. He absorbed their very essence, the unusual rhythms, the modal scales, the raw, sometimes quite dissonant harmonies,
Mm.
and fused them into his own fiercely modern musical language. The sources describe his music from this time as explosive, rhythmically daring, just unlike anything people had heard before.
And I bet that kind of originality wasn't exactly met with universal applause.
Huh. Far from it. While some definitely recognized his genius, a lot of the musical establishment and the public, too, were just bewildered, sometimes openly hostile.
But the resistance wasn't just about the sound.
No, not purely musical. The sources make it really clear his troubles became deeply political as well.
How did his music get tangled up in politics?
Well, he was intensely Hungarian nationalist in a cultural sense, deeply proud of his heritage, committed to preserving it.
Correct.
But he was fiercely anti-nationalist in the political exclusionary sense,
Mm.
especially as fascism started its rise in Europe.
Oh.
So his music, drawing from all these diverse folk sources, embodying freedom and originality that was seen as a direct challenge by the reactionary political forces, they wanted art to be safe, predictable, something that served state propaganda.
So his refusal to conform musically was tied directly to his refusal to conform politically.
Precisely. The sources give examples, the press attacking him, not just for his dissonant sounds, but for his outspoken condemnation of fascism. His refusal to cooperate with regimes that were suppressing artistic freedom and persecuting minorities.
He actively protested.
Yes, actively protested laws in Hungary that were mirroring Nazi policies.
Wow. It must have taken incredible courage to stand on a stage performing or conducting this challenging music, knowing it wasn't just being heard as sound, but as defiance against a really dangerous political tide.
The sources really emphasize this bravery. He consciously made his art, his research, a kind of defense against that rising authoritarianism. There's a powerful bit in the notes about his conviction, taken from a letter he wrote to his mother. He said, everyone has to find an ideal to fight for. And for him,
Yes.
he wrote, all my life, I will serve one goal, the Hungarian people, and people who want change through music and art.
People who want change through music and art. That line from the sources, that really elevates it, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it absolutely does.
It wasn't just about writing nice pieces. It was using his art as like a tool for cultural identity, a shield for heritage, and yeah, a weapon against oppression.
Totally. He saw his role as completely tied to the fate of his nation and really humanity itself.
But that integrity, that refusal to compromise or just stay quiet, it came at a huge personal cost, didn't it? Especially as things got darker politically.
It did, a devastating cost.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a really difficult turning point that's documented in the sources.
Okay.
As Hungary moved closer and closer to Nazi Germany, Bartók faced just immense pressure. He refused to perform in Germany under the Nazi regime.
Right.
He pulled his works from publishers who were associated with Germany. He kept speaking out, even when it was clearly dangerous.
And the consequences.
The sources detail how this stance led to isolation, loss of income as performance opportunities just dried up, and harassment.
And that ultimately led him, he had to leave Hungary, didn't he?
An agonizing decision, an exile he undertook, totally reluctantly, completely heartbroken. The sources are really poignant about this part,
Yeah.
describing how intensely he longed for his homeland for the rest of his life. He came to the United States in 1940, not really looking for a new life, more seeking refuge from forces he just couldn't fight from within Hungary anymore.
But life in America, it wasn't exactly a period of ease and recognition for him, was it?
No, far from it. The sources detail a whole new set of really profound challenges.
Such as?
Well, while he was respected by, a small circle of musicians and scholars, his modern compositions were still largely unknown, or at least unappreciated, by the wider American public and the big orchestras.
Which must have led to serious financial problems.
Huge financial hardship, yes. He really struggled to find consistent work, either performing or as a composer people wanted to commission. The income from his folk music research was minimal.
So how did he survive?
The sources describe him living in relative poverty, really dependent on occasional grants and some teaching work. It was such a stark contrast to his standing back in Europe, even during those difficult times there.
And piled on top of that immense stress, his health problems returned.
Yeah, the research notes his health started to decline significantly during his American years. He was eventually diagnosed with a form of leukemia.
Oh, wow.
So picture it. He's a reluctant exile, financially unstable, cut off from his roots, his most important work largely ignored, and now he's battling a terminal illness.
It's almost unbearable to think about, that level of struggle just piled on, and yet the sources suggest he didn't stop creating.
This is maybe the most astonishing part of his final years,
Hmm.
really highlighted in the material. Despite the physical pain, the emotional agony of exile, the money stress, his mind, as one source puts it beautifully, remained defiantly fertile.
Defiantly fertile, I like that.
Isn't it great? He kept composing some of his most significant works, like the Concerto for Orchestra, often seen as this testament to his unbreakable spirit. And he also kept going with his folk music work, transcribing this huge collection of Eastern European tunes, determined to leave that legacy behind.
So looking back across this whole life marked by illness, loss, political resistance, exile, hardship, how do the sources ultimately size up Béla Bartók's contribution?
They're unanimous, really. His life isn't measured by, material success or comfort during his lifetime.
Yeah.
It's measured by the profound, lasting impact he had. He fundamentally changed how folk music was studied and preserved around the world through his pioneering ethnomusicology, literally saving hundreds, maybe thousands, of unique melodies from just disappearing.
And his own music.
His compositions, the ones once seen as strange and difficult, are now celebrated. Cornerstones of 20th century music.
Yeah.
Admired for their raw power, that unique blend of folk and classical, their emotional depth, their sheer originality. The sources really stress that the very things that made him controversial, his integrity, his innovation, his refusal to compromise those, are exactly what secure his place as one of history's truly great artists.
It's such a powerful reminder, isn't it, that true greatness often comes out of that crucible of struggle. His life story, reading through this material, it really gives you pause. Because, while most of us aren't world-renowned composers,
Right.
we can all connect with aspects of the challenges he faced.
Absolutely. His journey brings up some really universal questions, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Like, have you ever felt alone in your convictions? Maybe battered by forces beyond your control. It could be personal stuff, could be bigger societal pressures. Have you ever wondered if your own voice, your actions, your own kind of unique expression, whatever that is for you, can actually make a meaningful difference in a world that sometimes feels, I don't know, indifferent or even hostile to being original or having integrity?
And based on the sources we've looked at, Bartók's life offers some pretty profound answers to those exact questions.
It really does. They show us the immense power of just persevering, pushing forward through unimaginable difficulty.
Yeah.
They highlight the absolute necessity sometimes of standing up for what you believe is right, even when doing that comes at an incredibly high personal cost.
It's a tough lesson.
It is. But his story teaches us that every act of creation, whether it's a symphony or something much smaller in scale, is fundamentally an act of hope.
An act of hope.
Yeah. And every effort we make to defend or preserve something valuable, maybe a cultural tradition, maybe a personal value, a creative vision, it's a vital stand against, against oblivion.
It really challenges you directly listening to this. The sources kind of end with these powerful questions for you listening right now. What ideals are you willing to fight for? What legacy do you hope to leave behind through your own unique struggles and triumphs?
Let Bartók's journey, as we've seen it through these sources, inspire you. They sort of invite you to look at your own challenges, not just as roadblocks, but maybe as that crucible for growth. Stand up for your beliefs. Cherish your roots, whatever form they take for you. And dare to innovate in your own life, to express your unique voice authentically.
Because, as Bartók himself put it, and as the material powerfully reminds us, throughout my life, I will serve one goal: the Hungarian people, and people who want change through music and art.
The world genuinely needs your courage, your creativity, your voice. Like Bartók, you have the power within you to take your own unique struggles, maybe your pain, your dreams, and transform them into something meaningful, something real.
What will you do with it?